Welcome to Inner Peace Better Health. I am your host, Shreya. Every moment holds a story. Some heal, some test, and some transform. Tonight, we explore the sacred rhythm of reflection, responsibility, and restoration with Caleb Matthews, a seeker and guide whose work dives deep into the unseen layers of life, helps people to uncover meaning in moments that may otherwise slip away, showing how the past, present, and future can align to bring inner peace and wholeness. So, welcome, Caleb. I'm honored to have you on my show.
Great. Thank you, Shreya, for having me on your show. I'm super excited to speak to you and our audience and together Inner Peace, Better Health podcast. Thank you for having me here. This is an honor. I'm looking forward to touching on reflection, responsibility, and restoration. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for your kind words. And Caleb, when you talk about moments in time, what do you believe makes a single moment powerful enough to shift a life?
That's a great question. These moments in time that all of us have across this planet, every single human being from country to country, from nation to nation, we all have these little windows of time, these moments in time that cause us to make a decision to either stop and reflect and take that responsibility to allow that restoration to take place, or we don't. And what really highlights a moment is, I believe, that wonder, that mystery, and the unpredictable. I like to say that if our lives are predictable every step of the way, then I believe somewhere along the line we've lost the wonder and the awe and the mystery that there is to pursue in this life. Because if we could predict every step, how boring would life be? I think it would be a pretty boring existence if we knew everything that was coming. So when these moments present themselves, it's important that we pause and take reflection, because especially in our culture, especially the Western culture, the world hustle culture, we're taught to be busy. The busier that we are, the more tasks that we have, the more things in our checklist we have to do to check off, the more successful we are. Well, that isn't necessarily often the case, is the actual reality. The reality is these moments of reflection where we can dig and really delve and glean wisdom from are truly, most of the time, the moments that are able to push us over the hump. And I believe that truly.
Yes, true. I absolutely agree with you. And I think true change hides in small moments we often miss. And you've told that so beautifully. And do you think people underestimate the small everyday moments?
Yes, I do. It makes me think of one of my favorite quotes from a novel, a book, and movie that many of our audience would be familiar with, The Lord of the Rings, and it's and The Hobbit, where Gandalf said, "I oftentimes think it's the small things, the ordinary deeds of simple folk that pushes back the darkness." And sometimes we look for the grand, we look for the lightning, the storms, the earthquakes, and the big bright lights of Hollywood, or, Times Square in New York, just to use some metaphors for these answers. But oftentimes it comes in the small things, the simple things. Maybe it's sitting in the park and watching a dog go by, and you see something in the smiling face of a pet that reminds you of something. It could be in the whistling of the wind through the trees. It could be for just going for a walk, and you stop and you sit and you ponder. You remember a moment that you let pass by from many, many years ago. These reflections can truly make the difference for sure. And there's a passage in the ancient texts of First Thessalonians 5:23, the book of Thessalonians, that talks about restoration of spirit, soul, and body. Because I believe in the SSB method, the C link of spirit, soul, and body, that we are three-part beings. And in the three-part beings in Thessalonians, it talks about, "Now may the God of peace himself sanctify you completely, and may your whole spirit, soul, and body be kept blameless and intact and whole." And there is that connection between spirit, soul, and body that connects to our inner peace and better health. But it starts with the first step in the three steps of reflection.
Yes, that really resonates. And I think it suggests transformation is not always the big events. And also, reflection is one of your pillars. Why is looking back so vital for moving forward?
Looking back and learning from history is absolutely essential for moving forward as successful, empowered individuals and human beings, entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders, fill in the blank. It's important moving forward because history speaks. That's one of the core pillars at the C-Link, my brand that I believe in, based underneath these pillars, which is, of course, reflection, responsibility, and restored. But history does speak. When we reflect and we look back from all that those who came before us have done, those in history who made the sacrifices, our generational line, our family line, people in history, and then we read about in the history books that were able to pave the way for us. Those around us, our peers, those that we draw inspiration from, or maybe people from the other side of the world that we can glean from as well too, from their wisdom. But looking back in our own lives, reflecting, it's important to take an inventory, a census of our senses, to look back, reflect, and say to ourselves, okay, what can I learn from my past? Whether it be a negative season that I had or a positive season, what gold can I extract from the river of the humanity of my past and reflect upon these things? And how can I use these little mentors and little life lessons to apply to my life now and take that responsibility moving forward upon those moments of reflection? How can I envision it? How can I see it in my mind's eye? And then how can I translate that to my physical life moving forward? And I believe when we start to do that and we start to look back on where we've come from and be thankful for it, all those seasons, the highs, the lows, the mountains, the valleys, then we know that we can take these lessons moving forward because we're all in transition. We're all in season. That seasons come and seasons go. So I want to encourage our audience, even listening right now as we speak on reflection, that maybe you've been in a time where your season of hardship, maybe it's been a long one. It's been 2, 5, 10 years, 15, 20 years. And most of the memories you remember looking back have been difficult. Well, I can promise you this, anything I've known from reflection in my life and also looking at history is that seasons do not last forever. And when we come back to this realization, then we can be empowered knowing that the mountaintop experiences of success are coming.
Yes, that is really insightful. And I think clarity often comes not in noise, but in silence. But how do we avoid getting trapped in regret while reflecting?
I think regret can come when we beat ourselves up too much. Excuse me. We beat ourselves up too much and we put the onus and the responsibility fully on ourselves. And of course, it's good to take responsibility from where we've come from, but regret starts to come, a unhealthy type of regret, when we take on the whole world on our shoulders. And I don't think we're supposed to do that. Really keep a light footprint in this world, I believe, so to speak. Yes, we take responsibility, maybe where we've fallen short or things we could have done that we could have changed and transformed and done over again. Sure. But there are some moments and there are some seasons and some instances and experiences that just aren't our fault. They could be the factors of our environment. They could be the factors of other people being involved. It could be the factors of a major world global shift in a season that came upon us. And it's important to step back and take inventory and say, okay, what is mine that I need to own? And what isn't mine that I need to release to God, to Spirit, to Creator? And because when we do this, we know that we can be free moving forward, because it's not our job to be the savior of the world and to be the liberator of the world. That job's already taken. But when we reflect and we give back our past and where we've come from to God moving forward in responsibility, then we can lean in towards truly walking in restoration.
Yes, that is really beautiful. And I think it shows reflection is not about dwelling, but about drawing wisdom to carry forward. And
Absolutely.
yes, and responsibility can feel heavy for many people. How do you reframe it so it becomes liberating rather than burdensome?
That's good. Liberating rather than burdensome would be taking it as a opportunity. as a turning of a chapter. I like to use the analogy. Every person likes to read a good book, right? Shreya, I know you like to read. For me, for our audience, we like to read a good book or watch a good movie. And when we are turning the chapters into the next phase of the story to be told, it's an opportunity. It can be scary for sure. This human existence, if it isn't scary, then I don't think we're dreaming big enough. If it's not scary, if it doesn't scare us, we're not dreaming big enough. But when we turn the chapter and we turn the page, we can be rest assured with confidence and with courage that we don't have to do this alone. And that is how I like to say, encouraging our audience, like this theme that we're talking about here, which is inner peace and better health. And I believe that connection comes to connecting with our spirituality, with our higher power, with God, whatever language that you, our audience, ourselves, that we use to connect with God and spirit. We know that these moments are a responsibility, that are encouraging, exciting, and not a burden, because we don't have to do it alone. Like the scripture says, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. And so when we surrender these things in our meditation, in our inner sanctuary of our spirit, soul, and body, and we surrender these things to God and we partner with the Spirit, then we know that these moments that we take, we can be rest assured and confidence that we aren't navigating this life alone.
Yes, that's really moving. And I think healing feels less like fixing, and it just makes feeling more like remembering wholeness. And also, is there a practical way someone can start taking responsibility today without feeling overwhelmed?
Yes, I'm glad that you asked that, because that's going to segue perfectly into my next point here, which comes from one of the most famous kings in history, some advice that he gave in the book of Psalms. The book of Psalms is one of the most famous books ever written. And King David talks about in the book of Psalms, speaking from our spirit, so from our spirit to our soul. And he says something like this: why are you downcast, O my soul? Why are you depressed, O my soul? Well, who's doing the talking? It's David's spirit. It's his spiritual engine in his trichotomous being, his spirit talking to his soul, saying, why are you downcast, O my soul? Why are you downcast, O my mind? Why are you downcast, O my mentality? You need to rise up and take ownership in your life and in God. And a practical tool and key for our audience, I think, because every person goes through this, including myself, so I'm speaking to the choir here, and that is, we have these moments where our soul is vexed, where our mind, will, and emotions and our mentality is challenged, where our mindset is challenged in this day and age and in life. Every generation that's been, that is, and will continue to be has struggles and wrestlings of the soul. Sometimes we've heard of the phrase dark night of the soul. Well, a key to be able to rise up is taking our posture of spirit and looking in towards our soul and doing the inward work and saying, why are you downcast, O my soul? Hope in God, hope in the Spirit, hope in your calling. In fact, in the book of Ephesians, another great book I recommend, it talks about a prayer. And the prayer goes like this: I pray that the eyes of your heart, the eyes of your spirit, may be flooded with all light, so that you can understand the confident hope that has been given by God to those God has called, for his holy people who are rich in his glorious inheritance. And these are ways that we can step into our spiritual inheritance. And that is speaking to our soul and saying, soul, it's time to rise up. Soul, it's time to rise up when I'm going to work. Soul, it's time to rise up when I walk in my relationships with other people. Soul, it's time to rise up when I'm walking out my purpose and calling on the earth. That's a key that I would give to our audiences. Speak to your soul, speak to your mind, will, and emotions, and take authority, because your spirit is supposed to be the one that governs the soul, not the soul governing the spirit.
That's really encouraging, turning responsibility into empowerment. I think that really gives people permission to act instead of freeze. And restoration sounds hopeful. What does it look like when someone truly experiences being restored?
That's great. The restoration process looks different for every single person. Restoration can have many forms. And I love thinking about a story in my own life that comes to mind. And that is when I encountered a man actually from the Middle East. His name was Kamran. And Kamran shared with me a very, very powerful insight of restoration and what it looked like for him. And I never forgot it this day. This was probably 14 years ago. And he said to me, Caleb, where I find restoration, where I find God's voice, because he had likened God's voice to restoration, is in the small things. It's in the taste of chocolate. It's in the smell of coffee, the singing of birds, the cooking of the breakfast, the whistling of the wind, the learning how to disappear off the timetable and the Gregorian calendar and the grid of busy Western culture and just being in that invisible secret place with me and God. And that could be by tasting chocolate, listening to the birds, cooking breakfast, drinking coffee. And those are the moments where I find restoration. And I never forgot that. And I did some introspection of my own life moving forward from that lesson of, okay, where can I find true restoration in nature, in my work, in what gives me joy, and not overcomplicate it? Because I believe as people, we can oftentimes overcomplicate what restoration looks like. We make it out to be this big ceremony and this big production. It doesn't have to be big. It can be very simple. And I want to encourage every single listener that's listening to take those timeouts, take those moments of restoration that you can walk in, that can be accelerated in your life between you and your higher power and God. So give it up to God, give it up to the Spirit, give it to the inner sanctuary of your spirit man, your spirit woman, communing with the Great Spirit. And when you do this, then you're going to find restoration, what that looks like for you. And it's beautiful.
That's really, really beautiful and striking. And thank you for sharing this. And does restoration always require time or can it happen in instant?
It's seasonal and also instantaneous. It's kind of a paradox. It can take time to restore. Healing and restoration and the inner work can take months, years, or decades in some instances. In some other moments, it happens in a flash of an eye or an instant. We see this in examples in our lives in the world around us, where relationships and the body, the physical body, and different aspects of the human existence can look like that they're healed in an instant. And there can be instantaneous healing, but oftentimes that instantaneous healing happens when there is a buildup towards that healing, that restoration. Some seasons it can be that we're watering seeds. Other seasons it can mean that we're uprooting. Some seasons it can be that we're planting. But we know, and this is something we can be assured in, that ultimately if we take a step back, that it's not up for us to change times and seasons. There's only one higher power, one creator, one God that does that. And God is the one that changes times and seasons, I believe. He raises up kings and queens. He deposes them. He changes the seasons on the earth. And God knows what's in the darkness and in the light. And ultimately, we don't have to take on that responsibility. But restoration, it can be instant or it can take time, for sure.
Yes, that's really profound. And I think healing as both a process and a possibility right now changes how we approach our struggles. That's really striking. And
Absolutely.
if these three pillars reflect responsibility and restored, were a cycle, where should someone begin?
Someone should begin from the place of taking conscious reflection. So back towards the cycle that we talked about: reflect, responsibility, and restore. Reflect is a decision. So, to use the just a simple analogy, looking in the mirror or looking in the ripple effect of the water and seeing your reflection. Reflection is a choice, and in the busy hustle and bustle and the chaos of our world, it can essentially be a flip. It can be a paradox to our culture that says, go, 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 drive yourself, drive yourself, drive yourself, do, accumulate, accumulate, accumulate. And doing and accumulating knowledge and walking in our responsibilities it's important. It's an important part of life, but reflection is what's going to keep our spiritual engine active, spirit, soul, and body long term. And I want to use an example from history because I'm all about history and history buff. And it's from the 1500s, attributed to a great navigator, a seaman, and explorer called Sir Francis Drake. Sir Francis Drake. And he talks about the deepest longings of the spirit, soul, and body for the new country, for this invisible world to become manifest in our lives. And he was one that navigated the world, and he had this poem that he wrote called Disturb Us. And it's really interesting. I just want to read it out really briefly here so we tie into what we're talking about. And that is, disturb us, Lord, when we are too pleased with ourselves, when our dreams have come true because we have dreamed too little, when we arrived safely because we sailed too close to the shore. Disturb us, Lord, with the abundance of the things we possess. We have lost our thirst for the waters of life, and having fallen in love with life, we have ceased to dream of eternity. And in our efforts to build a new earth, we have allowed our vision of the new heaven to dim. Disturb us, Lord, to dare more boldly, to venture on wider seas, where the storms will show your mastery, and where losing sight of land, we shall find the stars. We ask you, Lord God, to push back the horizons of our hopes and lead us into the future in strength, courage, hope, and love, attributed to Sir Francis Drake.
That's really beautiful. And thank you for sharing this with us and with our audience. That's really inspiring. And like, how can they sustain this cycle when life inevitably gets messy?
How can we sustain life being messy but ultimately still reflecting? I think is what you were asking there. Well, let's go into that. And messiness is a part of the human construct. It's part of the world system, and these things will happen to us from the time that we are born to the time that we live and to the time that we pass on. But how do we deal with messiness? Well, I think it comes from doing what we do as human beings every day. Like we all wash our hands, and we make sure that we change clothes, and we wash our clothes, and we change the bed sheets. And I would say in life for us, we have to make sure that we do that on a practical day by day basis to connect with the Spirit of God, to connect with our spirit man or spirit woman, and say, okay, what am I going to face that I take responsibility for, that's my own? And what doesn't belong to me? What part of the messiness of life doesn't belong to me that I need to let go? I just need to let it go. Like Elsa says in the song, let it go, let it go, let it go. Just like let it go and let these moments go and just push off what doesn't belong to us, but press forward to what our high calling is in life, and make sure that the messiness of the world doesn't weigh us down. It doesn't get us too far down, but we continue to push, we continue to learn from the messiness, but we don't let things cling on to us that don't belong to us.
Yes, that's really, really wonderful. And that's really inspiring. And I think it just makes the rhythm rather than just rigid, like giving rigid formulas to help people embrace growth as a way of living. And thank you for joining and sharing so much with us and with our audience. And thank you for sharing your wisdom, your practices, your history notes. All these things just made this conversation so beautiful. And if after this my listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
Best way to connect with me, actually, I just launched my YouTube channel where I talk more in depth about these teachings, little mini teachings, motivational teaching content, and guides to be able to help people with short videos, longer videos. My YouTube channel is the at symbol. So at the THECSEE and then link LINK at the C link. That is my YouTube channel. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I really enjoyed what Caleb had to share, I want to follow more of his content and his teachings, then you can find me on YouTube at the C link. You can also go on my website, which is www.calebmatthews.net. So my first and last name.net. I'll send out the information over to Shreya as well, so she has that there. Those are the main places that you can find me. And then, of course, on Instagram, Caleb on the Runway. That's all one word, Caleb on the Runway. And then Twitter, Caleb Matthews without the E. So Caleb Matthews without the E. And finally, my business in Mexico called the Itinerant Oasis, where digital nomads, people who want to work online, if you're looking to work online and book an online digital nomad workspace vacation, I do have the Itinerant Oasis, www.theitinerantoasis.com, theitinerantoasis.com. But thank you, Shreya, so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you, audience. If you want to tune into more of my teachings, please follow me on YouTube, hit subscribe. It really helps a lot.
Yes, and I will definitely make sure to attach all these details and links below so that the listeners can find them easily and get in touch with you and follow you and get more of your content. And to all my listeners, what a rich conversation. Khalib reminds us that every moment is an invitation. When we reflect, take responsibility, and allow restoration, we step into a deeper harmony with ourselves and with the life itself. If you are listening, take this as your cue. Pause, own your path, and welcome the healing that's waiting for you because the moment for change is always yours now. Thank you.